What's up, guys? So I am a used car dealer and I am at a used car dealer auction. This is the actual lot. You see all the cars here. They're going to pull them from this lot and run them through auction, but today is not an auction video. What we're going to do today is talk about if bids and no sales. So talked about that a little bit on the channel, but I want to go over it in detail because if you've been following the used car market at all, if you've been watching my channel, watching these other channels, you know that no sales are at an all-time high at these used car dealer auctions. I think the last number that I read was somewhere around 45% of these cars are getting no sold. So what I wanted to do was talk about why a car would be no sold, why a car would be put on an if bid, what an if bid is, what a no sale is. And those of you that are looking for an auction video, at the end of this video, if you hang on to the end, I'll put some auction footage in there so you can get your fix for this week, because I'm not going to actually have a full-on auction video this week. But if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and comment on the video what we're going to be doing. I think we're going to release it tomorrow, the day after you'll be seeing this. Is doing a question and answer with me. My wife is actually going to be picking out comments, a lot of the frequent questions, a lot of interesting questions that you guys have been leaving me, and we're going to just sit down and talk about them for a little bit. And I'm going to try to do that once a week. So it's the best way we know of to get your questions answered as of right now, because I can't answer all the comments, but we're going to try to make a video where I'm just answering a lot of the most common questions that we get. Another thing we're going to do, we got sent a code reader, so we're going to check that out today. There's going to be a link in the description below so you can actually get a discount on it if you like what you see, but we'll check that out in just a little bit. But here we go. So first, let's talk about what typically happens at a used car dealer auction when a car is actually sold. So all these cars are sitting out there, they're being brought here by a seller, usually a new car store, and these are trade-ins. So what will happen is they'll run one of these cars through lane, and the dealer that is selling this car will have a reserve on it. So say something like this Volkswagen, I don't know what it's worth, 2014, it's probably a $3,500 car. What they would do is they would have a reserve on it for $3,500, and as the bidders go up, let's say it brings $3,700. So at that point, it's hit the reserve, the seller has gotten what they want and a little bit more, so they will mark it as sold. The auctioneer will sell it in lane. So now what happens when a car doesn't go all the way up to reserve? So in that same scenario, let's talk about that Volkswagen. They want $3,500 for it, but instead of bringing $3,500 bucks, that car only brings $3,000. So obviously there's a $500 gap in between what the seller wants and what that car actually brought at an auction. So what will happen then is typically a car will then be put on an if bid on a phone call. So what happens then is that means that the deal did not get done on the block, but it's close enough. A $500 range is not far enough for the auction not to try to make the deal happen. So what will happen then is that they'll say, okay, if bid, put it on a phone call, and the auction company at the end of the auction will try to make that deal happen. So they'll typically call the seller and say, look, on the block, which is another word for the car going through the lane, the car brought $3,000, but you wanted $3,500. So what do you want to do? Do you want to try to counter? And at that point, usually what the seller will do, the seller will call back and say, yeah, you know what, we'll take $3,200 bucks for it. So call the buyer and see if they'll give us $3,200 bucks, and if that's the case, then they'll get the deal done. And that's what typically happens on an if bid on a phone call. Now recently, with the prices being so elevated and it's been such a seller's market, that a lot of times what these sellers will do is say, no, I want $3,500 bucks for it, and they'll just stay pat at that. And a lot of times us buyers, we would just have to pay what the seller wanted to be able to get the car. But what has happened recently is that the buyers are just saying no now. So the sellers are still kind of stuck in this time that we've had the last 2 years where price so elevated has been a seller's market, that they're still just no selling the car. And what I mean by no sell is they'll literally just refuse whatever the bid is. Another way that a no sell can happen is if the car goes through the block, and we'll use that same scenario with that $3,500 car where the seller wants $3,500 bucks for it. Let's say that car only brings $2,000, and that's actually happening now because the bidders are drying up, the demand is drying up. So if that car only brings $2,000, there's a $1,500 gap between what the seller wants and what the buyer wants. to do, and at that point the auctioneer sees the difference, because the auctioneer actually sees the floors, which is another word for reserve, on the car. So if they see that there's that much of a difference between what the buyer's willing to pay and what the seller is willing to take, then they will just no sell it on the block, meaning that they're just going to cut the deal out altogether. The seller keeps the car, and at that point they choose usually to just run the car again. And that's what we're seeing. If you've watched any of my videos, you see that I check in on a lot of these cars I'm seeing week after week after week. There's even one Corvette that a lot of you guys are getting attached to in the comments. It's very funny to see that. But we're on week 8 now of this dealer no selling it, and it's bringing $45,000. So there just has to be such a massive gap in between what this dealer has in this car and what the car is actually bringing. I would assume that dealer's probably got $60,000 in that car, and they're just not willing to take a $15,000 haircut yet. All right, so here's actually a good place to check out this scanner and show you guys what it can do. It does all your live data stuff, but for me at an auction right here today, I'm checking out this truck. It's a 2014 Sierra, but what I can do is I can just run a health report on this, and it will actually scan multiple systems on this truck. A lot of code readers, you have to actually scan single systems at a time, but this one will scan multiple. And I see that there's an actual code in the engine module, and I'll click on that in a second. But big thing that I like about this scanner is that it reads the transmission. There's a lot of scanners that will only read your engine module, will only read your OBD2 port. So that's one thing I really like about this scanner. So I can go in here and actually click on the engine module and find out what kind of issues are going on with this car, with this truck. And it shows as engine oil pressure control solenoid valve stuck off. So that's something that we can fix. It's not something I'm thrilled about. So not sure if we want to take the venture on this. But this is just an easy way to show you how this can read multiple systems on a car. It'll read your live data. There's even a battery voltage meter on the top of it. But if you're looking for a scanner, this might be something that you could be interested in. If you look in the description below, there's actually a coupon code, so you can get a discount on this particular scanner if you go through and use that link. So now that Corvette is an excellent example. I talked to you earlier about us talking about why would a dealer no sell a car. They're bringing it to auction to dump it, right? So why wouldn't they just dump it for whatever it brings? So in that case of that Corvette, that dealer probably has $60,000 in that thing, and it's only bringing 45 grand. So they're not willing to take a $15,000 loss. So they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. They either have to just keep on running it until that magical buyer, and not just one buyer, they need 2 buyers, because you need 2 guys that are bidding against each other to run it up to the price that they want. So if they don't have those 2 magical people that just need that car, and it keeps bringing $45,000, well, next week is probably going to bring $42,000, and the next week is probably going to bring $40,000, because as it runs every week, you're going to drop off in buyers. But that is a reason why a dealer would continuously no sell a car, is because they're just not willing to take a $15,000 or $20,000 loss yet, or they just can't. A lot of these guys that are actually repping these cars, they don't own the actual dealership, they are reps. So they can't go back and turn in and say, hey, I traded for this Corvette, I paid $60,000 for it, and then I had to sell it for 45 grand. Somebody's going to lose their job over that. And honestly, on that Corvette, somebody probably needs to lose their job. And it's just going to be to the point where all these dealerships with all these cars that they've got way too much money in, all these this money that they traded for these cars months and months ago, and now the market has come down 20%, they're just going to be stuck in it. Somebody's going to hold the bag, and it's going to be these big dealers that are going to get stuck in a lot of this inventory if they didn't act fast. A lot of times what they say in the wholesale market is first loss, best loss, and about 90% of the time that is true. So if you don't go ahead and take your lumps, take your medicine, and get rid of these cars the first time that you bring them to auction, they're just going to continuously go down in value. Because another thing too is lot rot is real. So as these cars sit out here, especially black ones, you look at this one right here, especially black cars that sit out here, and that Corvette's a darker color too, they get dirty and they look worse. And even though logic dictates that a dirty car can be cleaned up. The fact is it just does not look as good running through the auction, so it's not going to bring as much money. So there's my little spiel on no sales and if bids for the day. What we'll do is we'll go inside and I'll show you guys some of the auction footage for the ones of you that want to see it. So as long as these new car dealers continue to no sell these vehicles, then used car prices can't come down, because us smaller dealers, we need to be able to buy these cars at a lower rate than what these new car dealers are wanting to sell them for, to be able to offer them for lower prices to the retail public. So you're not going to see any flip in the market. You're not going to see any big downward motion in the used car prices until these new car dealers start to take their medicine, start to take their losses that they're going to take. If they take them right now, it's going to be better than 2 months from now if they finally decide to flip and start selling some of these cars. But as long as these no sales continue to stay at 40-45% plus at these auctions, used car prices aren't coming down. So if you watched the video to the end right here, thank you so much for all the support. Thank you guys for subscribing. Thank you guys for liking all the videos. It's just blown us away. And like I said, I think tomorrow we're going to come out with a video of answering a lot of the most common questions that we get on our channel. Like I said, my wife has picked out some unique questions and some common questions, and we're going to put them on a video tomorrow. I'm going to answer them for you, and we're going to try to do that every week. So leave comments with your questions in this video and in the upcoming next few videos, because we'll be pulling questions from that to be able to actually answer them on the question and answer video that I'm going to try to do once a week. So again, thank you guys for all the support, and hope you have a great rest of your day.